Let's do it.
I feel like we don't have that many people on. People are like, I don't want to talk about finances. No.
Well, it is a not so sexy topic,
Yeah.
right? And yet it is super important for us to know how to run a business. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I just think like we should be having more conversations like this. It's a huge part of owning your own business, but also life in general. Like I want to feel good about my business, my finances, but also my personal account and with like budgeting and saving. Cause I definitely have been there before where I just was rolling rampant, not in control. And I just love that feeling of like every week now, like checking in, feeling really good about it. And you just feel accomplished. You're like, damn, I got my shit in order.
I know. I recently was telling somebody and I was like, I am like excelling at this whole adulting thing because I'm checking in with my finances. Like I haven't even learned, I have so much more to learn on this topic, but it just feels so good. I'm like, I am being a true adult.
Well, and it was really motivating for me to see that you were checking in weekly, and because normally I do it monthly, and I'm like, no, I should be checking in weekly as well. And so I think you are like, they always say like your 5 closest friends, like you are like them,
Yeah.
and like that's like the type of person that I want to be surrounding myself with, because
Yeah.
a lot of real estate agents that I have talked to anyways, they do not have their finances in order. They're scrambling at the end of the year to be able to pay their taxes. And I don't want to be that way.
Right.
So both of you and I both shared on Instagram. You shared a profit and loss sheet, and I shared, hey guys, like how often are you checking in on your expenses? And we both got so much engagement from that. I was like, I think that we should make this our next mastermind topic. So, full disclosure, we are not CPAs, right? We're both only real estate agents, unless you have a secret to tell me.
Yeah. Nope, not this girl.
Yeah. So I felt like let's just start the conversation and start chatting about finances and how we're doing things. And if you guys like really like this mastermind and you want us to bring in a CPA, we'll bring in a professional and we can ask all those questions, I think that would be great for another week. So a lot of the messages that I had received, because I know a lot of newer agents follow me, and that's the people who are asking me all the questions every day, right? And so I know that, whether or not you're watching live or the replay, there's been a lot of questions, like a lot of engagement on my Instagram of people saying that they don't even know where to start. And they're like, I don't even make that much money. And I feel like even if you're getting one paycheck every couple of months, you need to be keeping track of that income, your mileage, and your expenses. And when I first got started, people were like, you need to treat this like a business. And I was like, look, I'm just trying to get business, right? Like your expenses and mileage and all that stuff's kind of on the back burner because you're like, I got a prospect. I need leads. I've got bills to pay, right? I don't know about you guys, but that was like my first year, to be completely honest with you, is at the end of the year, it came down for me to pay my taxes, and I didn't have QuickBooks yet. So I was going through each account, handwriting what expenses I had, and I did TurboTax by myself, and I did not feel good about it. This was 5 years ago. Yeah. So after that 1 year, I was like, okay, I don't want to do this again. I really want to feel better about this. But a lot of people that I know, that's what they're still doing. And I have a friend who isn't new in the business and I love her to death. Love her to death. But she couldn't even pay her taxes last year and is making payments. And to me, and if anyone is doing that and that's your situation, for me, like none of us want to do that. That's not ideal. So let's set ourselves up for success ahead of time. And maybe some of you guys, like, that would never be you, or maybe like you aren't keeping track at all through the year. So you need this mastermind to help motivate you. And maybe this will help keep you accountable. So, I wanted to mention that after that year, I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. No one teaches you these things. At least where I live, like I've never gone to a class of anybody like, this is exactly what you need to do. I had to actually go speak with a CPA to figure out what the heck to do. So after that year, right, like I mentioned, I was scrambling to pay my taxes. And after that year, I just started out small. So maybe that's where you're at right now. And all I did was I opened up a second account and I was taking 30% out of my paychecks and just putting in this tax account. So I wasn't even paying quarterly at that time. So just so that way, that next year I was set up. I didn't have to go through my expenses either. I was going through that throughout the year, and I had this money set aside for taxes. It was no big deal.
Let's go into detail about that. So when you say that, you're saying, okay, I'm going to go to my bank and I want to open up a separate checking account.
Yes. I just opened up one at that time, and I just would I would get my check from the brokerage
and put it in that account and that account only.
And it was just my name, right? It was just Stevie Hahn because I did not have an LLC or an S Corp set up yet. So it was my regular checking account that I was depositing this in, and I was just plugging in 30% into there because I wasn't making that much money yet. Yeah. So I wasn't needing this S Corp deduction yet. And I feel like some people may need to hear that. And they may need to hear that like they need to open up a second account, and each paycheck that you need to take a percentage and plug it into that account.
Yep. So
let's go past that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the honeymoon year, right? So like after year 1 of real estate, like that's your honeymoon year. Like you probably worked a W-2 job the first part of the year. And then the second part of the year, you were 1099. That is your honeymoon year because you probably have so many write-offs that you don't have to owe taxes. The next year is going to be a reality check. So that is when you will definitely be hit hard with taxes. And that's the importance of opening up the 2 accounts, right? So the way that I have mine structured is I have a checkings account under my business, and then I have a savings account under that business. So any income that comes in is going in right into that checking account. Now it's totally separate. So Amanda, Realtor, and Amanda like, hey, I want to go to Express and buy this, right? Like those 2 expenses are totally separate. So let's dive into categorizing so obviously we're both set up as an S Corp, right?
Yep.
Let's talk about the advantages of an S Corp so that we can then dive into those accounts so that I think it will make sense why we have the separate accounts. Do you think so?
Well, I think you only should have an S Corp unless you make a certain amount of money, right? That's my understanding. And my understanding is that you're not paying Social Security tax.
Yes, that's correct. Now there is a difference though. So starting from the beginning, I've always had a business account. So I bank with Chase. I haven't switched over from like the big bank yet. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I just feel like it's so convenient. So that's why I joined Chase, but we'll see if I like end up going with like a smaller route. But so I have my Chase personal checking and savings, and then I have my Chase business. I've always had that from the beginning. Whether I was S Corp or LLC or anything, it doesn't matter. I still have that business account. So I think that you should definitely have separate, even if you don't have an S Corp or you don't have an LLC, you should definitely keep those expenses separate. Like you said, you're not having to go back at the end of the year to itemize out, like, was this a business expense? Was this a personal expense? What was this? You know, you're keeping both accounts separate. And then I, at that time, was just paying myself like when I needed to, transferring money to my personal account. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't yet set up on a salary. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about with the S Corp.
Yeah. So basically, this is how I have it set up. When we get paid at the title company, right, is when we get our check, and it goes out to the brokerage that you are with. So mine gets written out to Keller Williams. I bring that check to the company, and then they give me a check. And now it says Stevie Hahn, PA, because that's how it's set up with the S Corp, and that's how my business account is set up. So I have them set up to where they send that or write that check that way. And I deposit that check into my business account. And from there, and this takes 2 seconds. So it might sound kind of complicated, I feel like, but now that I've been doing this and I've set it up this way, I'm like, why haven't I been doing this all along? It takes 2 seconds to go in, like deposit the check at the bank, right? Like we all do, and come back home. And it takes 1 to 2 minutes for me to put 30% in my taxes, 30% in my savings. And I've got 5 little accounts. So I'm splitting them up. And like that takes like a couple minutes. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, I feel good about this. We move on. Whereas before, it's just like, oh, you deposit in that account. Bye. It's who knows how much I'm spending. Da, da, da. So I just think that it's so important to just deposit the check, go home, split it up.
Absolutely. And there is, depending on like the way that you have it set up. So like with my CPA, I have it so that, um, I now get a salary. So like my S corp is the owner, and the owner of that pays me a reasonable salary, which helps me with tax benefits.
Every 2 years, or 2 years, 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. No,
This margarita is hitting good.
Every 2 weeks. And so like you can have like your CPA set it up for you. There's programs that are usually about $30 a month, and they'll charge you to have yourself set up on a salary, and they'll pay you and they'll track all those expenses for you. So they'll put that money in those specific accounts for you basically. So I think that's super important to have that set up. And then, like you said, making sure that there's another account for your taxes, your savings, and all of those things.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention that I use QuickBooks, and I feel like it's so easy. It's very user friendly. And all I do is I've plugged in my accounts in there so they have everything. And I pay for the self-employed account, which I think is like $20 a month.
I think it's 15.
Oh, okay. Maybe you got a discount. You got the special.
No, I'm just kidding.
So, and that's even a tax deduction is the QuickBooks $15, $20 thing. Yeah. But yes. And so it's so easy. So it hooks up to my accounts. So literally every week I'm going through and just clicking business, personal, business, personal. Like it's so simple. And then I have it hooked up to my phone, and it keeps track of the mileage. So I like to do everything on the desktop. So they do have an app, but I really just like using my big screen. It's just so much nicer. And so I'll plug in business, personal, and y'all, this takes me, now that I'm doing it every week, it's just like a couple minutes. And then I go through the mileage side, and it's the same thing, business or personal, business or personal. It's so simple, right? You have QuickBooks too.
Yeah, it's super easy to do. So simply you link up all of your bank accounts. So it will automatically sync with my expenses. So it's so funny to see, like, I'll spend something on like Amazon, and like it'll still show pending in my account, but it'll be on my QuickBooks. I'm like, dang, y'all are quick to get there into that account, which is just really nice, because then, I don't even have to think about it. So one of the cool things about QuickBooks is that you can create a rule. So if I'm spending money at, let's say I'm spending money at Target, and
let's just say that happens sometimes.
That happens, and it is listed under office supplies, because every time I go to Target, I only purchase office supplies, right? So I can create a rule so that every time that Target shows up in my QuickBooks, it's automatically going to list it as a business expense, and it's going to categorize it under office supplies. So it's called create a rule. Make sure you do that. You can also, so like we have our phone bill on there, and like I write off a portion of our AT&T phone bill for business expenses. The other portion of that is personal, because Nick and I are on the same plan. Not all of it is business, right? So like,
yeah,
I have a rule set up where a certain dollar amount is spent or is categorized as business, and then the other portion of it is categorized as personal. And since I created that rule, I never have to go back and think about it. So that's why when Stevie's saying, hey, it literally takes me, if I go in once a week, It'll take me 5 minutes or less just to categorize
Yeah.
everything, create rules. And then what's really cool is that QuickBooks will create P&Ls for you. It will create tax. So it'll categorize everything. So like I had a huge eye opener this week when I went through and I looked at how much money am I spending on like entertainment, office supplies, contract labor work, like all these different things. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, okay, so I've got to like maybe take a look at what I'm spending over here and maybe drop down some of those expenses, right? Like creating a budget. So
Yeah,
that
just like you weren't looking at that and analyzing it. Then you're not like, it's not in front of you, it's not in front of your face, and you're just like, oh, seems fine, you know?
Yep. And when it came down to purchasing a home, like, okay, self-employed, y'all know it's super hard for us to get qualified for loans. Like, it was like pulling teeth getting qualified for a loan for our new house. But they were like, hey, show us a P&L. And all I had to go in there and click two buttons and it pulled it for me. And I sent it over to the lender. I didn't
Yeah.
have I didn't have to think about it.
How about let's share the story of when I called you and I was like, they're asking for a profit and loss sheet. What the fuck?
I was like, okay, hold.
And I was like, okay, I literally went in QuickBooks. There's a profit and loss section. All I did, even the lender was like, okay, you know, you can take a day or two to get it back to me. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then I go into QuickBooks, click profit and loss sheet, printed it off, saved it as a PDF, sent it off to him, and he had it to him in 1 minute. And I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah. So it just made it super nice to be able to share like, okay, here's where my business is. I have the fund.
Yeah.
You know, all of those.
And there's so many things that I'm constantly like buying the same things of. Like Office Depot is where I print all my guides. I don't really have a lot of expenses. And so it doesn't really take me a long time, but that's like one thing that I do have a lot of is like Office Depot trips.
Yeah.
And there's a rule, it asks you because it notices like you've been going there a lot and that you've been clicking business. So now like all my Office Depot trips are automatically categorized as business. So I'm not even having to like think about it. So I feel like it's extremely user friendly. I'm not tech savvy at all. I think it's funny when people call me with like technical questions and I'm like, yeah, I have no idea. Just because I know how to do a social media Instagram post does not mean I'm tech savvy. So it's just like amazing. It's so cheap. You can write it off. Like everyone should easily have a QuickBooks account. And so now I'm paying quarterly. And it like now I feel like honestly it's great because it's a less of a ding at the end of the year, right? You're like oh my gosh, I just feel like I pay so much.
Yeah, and if you don't
That's painful.
if you don't track it accordingly, you will get penalized at the end of the year.
So I feel like it's good. It's less painful. I mean, you're still paying the same amount, even though you're paying quarterly, but like, I feel like it's less painful and you just feel like you have your stuff together. And I like that feeling of like in control, feeling good. I've got my savings account. I've got my budget here, and it keeps me so much more mindful because y'all, there's just one thing that I like, and that's called Amazon. And when I'm constantly like, personal to these Amazon purchases, I'm like, what the heck? All right, we need to cut it back. It keeps you like mindful of these things. So, let's see. I had some notes. Let me see if I have anything else that I didn't mention.
I wanted to go over a couple others. So also you have the ability to add your CPA. So it makes it really nice at the end of the year when I'm like, hey, how are we looking on things? Or he knows like I want to check in quarterly for my taxes and just review things. He has access and it notifies me when he's logging in. So it's not that he has access to making any sort of, doesn't have access to like my bank account information. He doesn't have access to edit anything. Although I wish he did, because he's like, hey, I need you to recategorize. I'm like, can you just do it for me? He's like, I don't have that authority. I'm like, well, I'll just give you my login. Like, just do it for me, right? Like,
yeah.
So they have you have to give them permission to be able to log into there. So it makes it really nice. You can pull up all those things. Like Stevie said, they have the mileage. So it makes it super convenient to be able to write that off as well. And then also something that I recently incorporated in is using Mint. which is my personal, it's like a QuickBooks for your personal side. So I have recently, it's basically the same thing. Link all your bank accounts. You can go in and link, like I added in like my student loan payments. I added in my car. I added in just like other like Sunshine Property. That's my LLC for my rental properties. So I have like its own side of things over there, just so that I can kind of see the money flowing in, the money going out, and I can create rules. I can create budgets. So what's really cool is like it will notify me like, hey Amanda, you set a budget this month to spend so much on entertainment. You are at 75% of your entertainment and it's only the 15th of the month. And I'm like, shoot. Like
Yeah.
I either have to increase my entertainment amount and take away from something else,
Yeah.
or no more going out that month, right? So that makes it really nice. And then you can also, like, if one of your goals is to pay off a specific debt, it will like literally outline a game plan for you to do that. It will say you need to pay X amount more a month for the next however many months to get it paid down by your end goal. So I love it because if you guys have ever heard of the debt snowball, right? Everybody, Dave Ramsey, debt snowball, like you can easily like put together like, okay, I have a game plan to pay off this. And then once I pay off that, then I'll have X amount of money. So it kind of falls in line with that. Just making it like really seamless to do. And something that I recently did, it notified me and said like, you're paying X amount in monthly subscriptions. And that was just on the personal side. It wasn't even my business side. And I was like, sweet baby Jesus, like, what is this? And I called Nick and I was like, we have a YouTube premium for what? Like, since when? And like, it's one of those, like, get a 7-day free. Well, we never canceled it. And so I like look back and I'm like, good Lord. So of course, like I canceled that. Like I canceled a whole bunch of things that like I'm not utilizing. And so it brings awareness that I didn't have those items in the forefront, especially if it's just like, I don't know about y'all, like somebody told me it's ignorant and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be ignorant. It's ignorant not to look at your financials.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, like nobody's ever said Amanda and ignorant in the same sentence. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look at my expenses.
Well, and plus, like, I'm trying to retire. Like, I love real estate. Okay. Y'all know I love this job, but I do not want to do it for the rest of my life. So I want to like make sure that shit is in order and I've got money in my savings, my retirement, I'm paying my taxes so no one can come after me. And honestly, like, I don't know if this sounds weird, but I love having conversations like this. Like, I feel like a lot of people don't like to talk about finances, but I think that you are who you surround yourself with. So if you have more questions about this, or if you want to talk about this more, you want us to dive in more details, you want us to bring on a CPA for a call and ask them questions, let us know, because like, we want to help you and like we like talking about it. And I think that it's just important. It's our business and we want to feel good about it in our finances, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. So I think that's really everything that I have.
Yeah.
What do you
Did
think?
anyone have any questions? We might actually end on time this time.
I know, right? Last week we went over like,
I feel like we go over every single week, but I just love like us even just like starting the conversation. I think was so beneficial because I don't really have any friends that we like talk about stuff like this, even though a lot of my friends are real estate agents. But to be honest with you, anytime we've talked about it, no one has their shit in order. And I just feel like the IRS is probably going to come after us one day. And if we come back to them able to present X, Y, and Z profit and loss sheets, and that we've been keeping receipts and tracking our mileage with these apps, like, I just think like we should have our shit together. It's a business and you don't want to be scrambling at the end of the year trying to pay the IRS because God, that's going to be a really shitty feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you were saying, like we weren't taught these things. Like I always joke, like, I don't know how to balance a checkbook. Like checkbook's even like in. People are like, write a check, and I'm like, y'all got Venmo? Like,
Yeah.
write a check. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like, these aren't things that they teach you in real estate. Like, a lot of people are acting just like not proactively, right? And so
Yeah.
I want to be proactive with my business. I want to be proactive with my expenses. I
Shoot,
want
and
to
just
control of my money. I want to know what's going in, what's coming out. And I want to make sure that, like you said, like I have money in the bank to retire, or if I see an amazing investment property, like I want to be able to have the funds
yeah.
and be able to say, yes, I want to go do this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
okay. So it sounds like yes, yes, yes. Would love to hear from a CPA. That's awesome.
Okay, cool.
Ashley nailed it on the head. Not all CPAs are created equal or specialize in real estate. 110%. I had a CPA previously, and I worked with him and really liked him. And then my business kind of took off year 2. And what he told me that I owed in taxes was like an amount that made me want to fall out of my chair. Like my jaw hit the ground, like pick it back up. So like I got with a real estate CPA and was able to save and recategorize. And that's who was like,
Yeah.
hey, have you thought about an S corp? So all of the awesome things like that. So I definitely agree with you. Reach out to anybody in your brokerage, or like maybe somebody that's been in the business for a couple of years, and ask who they're using. Don't just like test the waters with any CPA. Like, it's worth the investment, and it's a write-off. So invest in a great CPA.
Yeah. And I think just honestly, like take the time to educate yourself, because it is your business and it is your money that we work so freaking hard for.
Yep.
And honestly, there's a lot of resources out there. And I wish someone had brought light to me in the beginning, because I had no idea like who to talk to about this. But honestly, Google is an amazing tool, and there's so many YouTube videos out there. And I just feel like if you have questions, reach out to me. I can always ask the CPA, and like just get help. Like I know some people like really, really need help with their finances. Like maybe not on here, maybe on the replay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's really important. So I'm glad that we did this topic today, even though it wasn't like super fun and exciting. But I think